Greetings, everyone. Welcome back. This is Holocron number 2 in Darth Loquitur's Mod Mastery series. In the first Holocron, we discussed mod basics, how mods work, how the stats develop, which stats are desirable in a mod, which ones aren't so much. And everybody's getting anxious to know, well, how does that help me mod a character? And I just want to tell you that my approach to modding is less about how to mod each individual character, and it's more about how to build a good inventory of mods so that you always have mods sitting around and you can choose from the ones you have to build almost any character in the game. To support that, we're going to do a lot of math in this holocron. We're going to talk a little bit about the mod challenges just for early game players to establish some things there. Then we're going to spend a lot of time talking about fight math in the game, how the statistics interact with each other. We're going to do a mod set analysis with some special emphasis on a few different mod sets that make them either good or bad. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the set mechanics, and we're going to wrap the video up with a discussion of what mod sets you should be farming to build that mod inventory in the right way, especially in the early game, how that affects you going into the mid game, and what you should do going into the late game. That's the big payout at the end of the video, what mods to actually farm. So in mod challenges, if you look at the holo tables, they're right next to the mod battles. They unlock pretty early in the game, and each challenge is progressively harder. The health challenge is easiest. The defense challenge is right next to it. All you have to do to enter these challenges is simply click on the holo table, click on the enter button, and just be aware that when you go in here, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, you really want to get to tier 3 before you spend a lot of energy, because we're looking for 5-dot mods. We established in the first holocron that we were only going to work with 5-dot mods as soon as we possibly could get to that level. And you can see here that you don't get 5-dot mods from farming these nodes until you get to tier 3. So that's it. You have to try to get to tier 3. Hopefully in defense as soon as you can. That's the first mod challenge that you're going to want to farm. For new players, it does take some time to work up through the different mod challenges. It's fine to farm some health and defense at first, and then move up to different mod sets as you get better characters and unlock the challenges to a higher level. It's also fine, as we talked about earlier, to get mods and use mods with less than 5 dots. Just be careful. Don't invest too much in them. Don't take them all the way up to that level 15 value. Just maybe put them at level 9, something like that. Get the value out of the set bonus and prepare to take them off and sell them later. So just don't overinvest. Those are credits that you could use for something else more useful. For new players, those credits will always be low. It does take a lot of credits to put them out at 15. So just be cautious. Be patient. It'll come soon enough. The matter of time when you can't get 5-dot mods is only a matter of a couple weeks at the most, and you'll be farming those challenges, getting 5-dot mods. And the 6 or 7 days that you might get advantage out of a 2-dot mod, just not worth it. Just wait till you start those 5-dot mods rolling in, and then try to get good ones to put at 15. To be clear, you do not want to get desperate and just start leveling everything. That is not the way. Now let's talk about the basic fight math in the game. The most basic math is very simple. Your character's health is their life. They have protection, which is like a shield or a force field or however you want to think of it. And the opponent has to get through that before they can attack your health. Attacks do damage, which is reduced by your defense stats. Tanks are characters that are built to try to soak hits, and typically they have higher health pools and more defense and less offense, and some kind of skill with taunt or something like that to direct your opponent's attacks to them rather than your attackers. Attackers, meanwhile, are trying to just do the maximum amount of damage and remove the protection and health from the other characters. Support and healer characters are typically labeled that way, either because they have buffs that make your team better, they have debuffs that try to make the opposing team perform much worse, they might be healing, or there might be a strong element of control, for example, stuns, dazes, shocks, things of that nature that help control the opposing enemy team. So fight math, simple, get through protection, get through health, kill the characters, tanks try to get in the way, attackers try to do as much damage as possible, supports and healers are either trying to make your team better or the opposing team worse. Hope that all makes sense. When we talk about attacks, one of the most important elements are critical hits. So characters have a chance to do extra damage and score a critical hit. If you look at a character's stats, they will have a stat called critical chance. And that's just the chance out of 100% that the hit that they score will be a critical hit. A critical hit automatically, according to the game, no mods, nothing needs to be done. A critical hit will do 50% more damage for a total of 150% of the normal damage. Your crit chance can be increased, and your crit damage can be increased by the main stat on a triangle. You can get crit damage on that triangle. You can also get a critical damage mod set to further increase critical damage. Obviously, for damage dealing characters that are trying to kill the opponent, 150% damage is better than 100%. So the idea of getting a critical hit, getting a lot of critical hits, and scoring very high damage when you get that critical hit is very important for offensive damage dealing characters. Almost any character in the game. So there are characters in the game that trigger special effects or abilities from scoring a critical hit. If you read their kit and you see a skill like that, just be aware on those characters, it may be more important to get to 100% crit chance and guarantee that everything is a crit to trigger that effect, rather than to try to increase damage through crit damage and other means. There are characters and abilities in the game that reduce the chance of being critically hit, including the stat on an arrow called Crit Avoidance. Crit Avoidance directly reduces your crit chance by the amount of the Crit Avoidance arrow. So think about that. Even 100% critical chance does not guarantee a critical hit every time. If somebody has some means of reducing your critical chance, you may still not get a critical hit. So some characters you even want to put at, let's say, 115, 120% crit chance to make sure that you have the very most chance of getting a critical hit, even against characters that may be using that critical avoidance techniques. Here's some examples of characters that trigger directly from critical chance. This is the first box here, the big box on the left, is from Jedi Training Rey. Resistance allies have 30% critical chance and 30% critical damage. When they score a critical hit, they have a 70% chance to inflict expose. Resistance allies gain turn meter when an enemy is exposed. So if you have a high critical chance, you'll get a critical hit, it'll do more critical damage, 70% chance to expose, which gives turn meter to your team. So for this team, scoring a critical hit is absolutely necessary. We want every hit that we score to be a critical hit to trigger all of these effects. The next box on the upper right is the Geonosian Soldier. It says simply that Geo allies have 15% crit chance, and he gains 25% turn meter when scoring a critical hit. Now he assists along with the Geo mechanics, so every time he assists, if his basic attack that he makes is a critical hit, he will get more turn meter, and he will take a lot more turns than any other Geo. That mechanic is massively beneficial to the Geo team, so you want to guarantee your Geo Soldier has at least 100% crit chance as early in the game as it's reasonable to get that done. Another one on the bottom right is the Sith Trooper, the red Sith Trooper in the game. Whenever another First Order or Sith ally scores a critical hit or stuns an enemy, Sith Trooper is called to assist. So in this case, you want the rest of the characters in the team to have high critical chance, have a very good chance that every hit they make is critical, and that way the Sith Trooper will always be called to assist. Now they do have advantage mechanics, and that helps them get critical hits all the time, but still, a lot of the characters in that team, you will want to focus on critical chance. So let's talk just a little bit about the idea of buffs and debuffs. So in the game, stats can be increased with buffs. Those are the green icons that show above your characters. You can get offense up to increase your offense, critical chance, critical damage, potency up, defense up. You can get all kinds of different stat bonuses that are called buffs. Stats can also be decreased on an opponent using debuffs, and they show up as red icons above the opponent's characters. Debuffs are a very important part of the game, and there are a lot of teams that thrive on the particular type of debuffs that they're trying to apply. Just be aware that when you attempt to apply a debuff to an opponent, it's not a guarantee that the opponent is affected. So just because a character says on a basic attack he applies ability block, unless the skill specifically says it can't be evaded or resisted, then the character doesn't have a 100% chance to apply that debuff. Instead, the game does a calculation of a stat called Potency against a stat called Tenacity to determine whether or not that debuff actually sticks to the opponent's character. So Potency is the chance that you have to apply the debuff, and the base chance is an implied 100% chance for success. So 0 potency against 0 tenacity means all the chance that you have to apply that debuff is there. There's no reduction in your chance to apply it. There is a built-in 15% chance that a debuff simply won't work no matter what the math. And that's a way that the game tries to, let's say, randomize just a little bit in the favor of the defensive team. If it wasn't in there, the AI would, play the game the way the AI plays. And if you could guarantee all your debuffs in a certain way, in certain matchups, that gives you a huge advantage. So by making this, like 1 in 6 chance that just anything can miss, it does give a random element to the matchup where even with the good intentions, you can still lose. And of course, people refer to that as RNG, random number generation, and blame that for a lot of losses. And it does. I mean, it comes into play sometimes really at inconvenient times, and something that you really need to stick just won't work. Tenacity is then the chance for a character to resist the debuff against potency. So the way I like to think of it is kind of this 3-part bar. So at the left side, you've got always going to miss. There's a 15% chance that it's always going to miss. In the middle, then, you have this chance that it's going to succeed based on the difference between potency and tenacity. And then at the other end, you have this idea of tenacity reducing the chance for the buff to land. So the way I think of it, you've got this piece at the end that says the debuff might fail to apply. Then you've got this next piece that says, okay, I've got this much potency to try to get it to stick. And meanwhile, the opponent's building up tenacity, going, okay, I'm reducing that chance, and just pushing that bar as far back. And if the tenacity is more than 100% of the potency, then there is a 0 chance of the buff applying. Okay? So if you have 0 potency and 0 tenacity, it's a 100% chance that the potency overrides tenacity. If you have 100 tenacity and the opponent has 0 potency, that means that the opponent has no chance to land the debuff. Okay? So we'll take a look at some specific examples here and try to walk you through the math. So here we have a potency of 65 versus a tenacity of 50%. So we take the implied 100%, We add 65% to that, and we subtract off 50. And that gives us a 115% chance that the potency overrides tenacity. But still, remember, that gives you an 85% chance that the buff will work. You still have that 15% random chance that it won't work at all. Okay? That's the best you can do. But in this case, our potency is above the tenacity score, and that means that the tenacity is not reducing our chance to apply the debuff. In the next example, we have 65% potency against an opponent that has built up 115% tenacity. So we take the implied 100%, we add the 65 for 165. Now we subtract off this 115 tenacity, and it comes out to be 50%. That means there's a 50% chance that it works. Now again, if you think about my bar, there's a 15% chance it always fails. There's a 50% chance that it works. And then at the top end, the tenacity has reduced 35% chance off the top end. Okay? So tenacity has pushed that back down 35% so that you only have that middle 50% chance that it's going to work. In the third case, we've got 65% potency versus 175% tenacity. 100 plus 65 is 165. 175 tenacity means there's a negative 10% chance. There's a 0 chance. There's no chance that the buff will apply. There's a 15% chance to fail. And then all of the potency, all of the chance for success has been removed by tenacity. Tenacity has pushed that chance to 0. All right, so in the last case, now we've increased the potency to 115% versus that tenacity of 75%. And now again, you do the math. 100 plus 115 minus 175 gives you a 40% chance to land a debuff. Again, 15%, 40% that it works, and tenacity has pushed that down to 40%. I hope that all makes sense. It's kind of complicated, but in a way, it's not too bad once you get used to the idea that even if you plan for complete success, there's still a chance of failure. Again, unless the skill actually says that it can't be resisted, in which case that 15% doesn't apply. It always works and it can't be resisted. Most characters have some kind of debuff somewhere in their kit. For some characters, it's something that's nice to get. Basic attack, if the character's already debuffed, put on a daze. Okay, it's a nice buff to get. It's a nice debuff to land. But controlling the other debuffs and making sure they're already debuffed before you daze them and, whatever. Okay, so maybe the character's other skills are good, and if you get the daze, it's okay. Some characters, the debuffs are absolutely critical. Darth Vader's an example of that. Bastila Shan Fallen's another example of that. Those characters' best skills are their debuff skills, and if those don't work and don't land, then the character is much less effective. Okay? So for characters that have debuffs fundamental to their performance, you have to have potency. You have to make sure that you have enough potency that you've always got a chance to land those debuffs so that a high tenacity opponent doesn't just completely shut you down. If you want to build a character that resists debuffs, then you really have to go for a maximized tenacity. Remember, in order to get to 0 in the first place, you have to get the first 100% tenacity just to be at 0. And then if your opponent has added potency, you need to add that much more tenacity to get rid of the potency that they've added. So let's say a character has a base stat of 50 and they've added 20 potency and they're in 70. You need to be at 170 tenacity to overcome that, and that is a lot. That is a lot of tenacity. Just as a note, the tenacity down debuff applies automatically, and on a check, it gives a minus 99999 tenacity. So basically, once you have tenacity down, all your debuffs are going to stick because there's no chance for the opponent to resist anymore. There still is that 15% chance that it simply doesn't work, however. So even with tenacity down, it's not a guarantee, and you still have to work on that. Now, I did make a mistake in my last mod video. I talked about Geonosian Soldier. His basic applies tenacity down. And at the time of the last video, I thought, well, it's a debuff, right? So I need to have potency in order to make the tenacity down stick. But the way the calculation works, the tenacity down will stick regardless of your potency. So if that's the character's ability and you just want to land the tenacity down debuff, just be aware for those characters, you don't need to worry about your potency because it's built into the tenacity down debuff that it will work. Okay? So that's another little quirky thing just to be aware of. So basically, the Geonosian Soldier doesn't need potency to stick tenacity down. In terms of tenacity, if you're going to build a character for high tenacity, especially a character that you're going to take on offense, you really have to go all in. Okay? So revisiting the math, it becomes clear resisting 50% of the time isn't predictable. So if you bring in a character and you say, okay, I'm fighting against Count Dooku and he stuns all the time on basics. I don't want to get stunned, so I need enough tenacity to resist every single one of his stuns. Well, if he has a 50% chance of landing the stun, you're going to be stunned 50% of the time. That's statistics, right? That's not going to be very effective for you. So really you have to have a high enough tenacity that you can pretty much guarantee that no debuff is going to land. Okay? And be aware that most characters, even if they're not trying to get potency, somewhere in their mod set, there'll be a mod with a potency substat that just, happen to be one of the substats they get in their mod set. So it's very easy to have some extra potency. So you really need to get to a high benchmark. I would say if you really want to build a tenacity-based character, you should use 170% tenacity as a good benchmark for what's currently in the game right now. To achieve that 170%, that requires your base tenacity on the character. It requires 3 tenacity mod sets, a tenacity main stat on the cross, and then good tenacity substats on all of your other mods. So you have to have 6 mods, 1 with a main stat and tenacity, 5 other ones with tenacity somewhere in their substats just to hit that 170. So it's really a challenging thing to do. For a character on defense, let's say you just want to make it harder for certain teams to beat you, like a Geo team, and you say, okay, I don't want Vader to be able to easily beat my Geos, so I'm going to build a bunch of tenacity on the Brood Alpha so that the buffs don't stick to him. Okay? So you can do that, and if you put that team on defense, you're not in control of it, and a 50% chance is okay. It makes it unpredictable for the opponent. Maybe you get lucky, maybe you don't, but it's on defense. It's okay. You're hoping to get a little bit lucky. But for a character on offense, that's where you really need to control the matchup, and you absolutely have to optimize it. Or in my opinion, if you can't optimize it, don't even bother. Having a 97% tenacity isn't useful because there's a lot of characters that will have 70% tenacity, for example. And if you're sitting at, let's just use 100% tenacity, it does give you a 30% less chance to be affected, but they still have a 70% chance that it works. So it's not helping too much. All right, here's an example of a character that I've gone all in on tenacity on my own account. This is my Enfys Nest, and you can see that her tenacity has been built up to 174%, and that's an additional 129% from the mods. So her tenacity is almost all from her mods. Her base tenacity isn't really all that great. Okay, but Enfys Nest we can use for a bunch of different counters, and with her high tenacity, she's going to resist certain debuffs. She's a counter attacker, so we don't want stun, we don't want daze, and we certainly don't want healing immunity, which would prevent her from doing what she does so well. So those debuffs can really shut Nest down. If we can just make it so that she's not affected by those debuffs, then she's, in a way, in matchups that you can choose, she's almost invincible. Another example of a character that I've chosen for tenacity, probably not a common thing to do, but Mon Mothma has a very high base tenacity. You can see with the tenacity sets, and these aren't even 6-dot mods, there's still a lot of 5-dot mods on her, and we've got her tenacity already to 206%. There are certain debuffs that are annoying for the Mon Mothma team. Be aware that her leadership ability lets her share those tenacity stats with her team at the start. That is one of the shared stats among the Mon Mothma team. So not only does she get a high tenacity, but she also shares that tenacity with all of her friends in the team. And you can actually build a very high tenacity Mon Mothma Rebel Fighter team, which I have done, and I have found very rewarding and very successful in beating separatist teams like Newt Gunray, Count Dooku, things with all kinds of nasty debuffs. Just doesn't work against this team. Geo Brood Alpha is an example where you might just add a little tenacity. He already has a bonus of 60% tenacity, so that'll boost up his tenacity quite a bit over the base. And this is a character that you want to be quite fast. So you can put a speed set on him, and then if you just put a tenacity cross with tenacity as the main stat, and then, one other tenacity mod somewhere to get the set bonus, just that cross and just that set bonus are enough to add tenacity to a point where it gives Vader a problem in countering the Geos. It does make the Brood Alpha much harder to kill. All right, we're going to talk quickly about the idea of offense in the fighting math. So there's separate lines for damage and special damage, and some people pay a lot of attention to that. But I'm just going to say that in general, if you have a character that you want to do damage, adding offense is going to increase both of those stats in some relative way. So you don't have to spend a lot of time looking at the stats for regular damage, physical damage versus special damage. However, for some characters, there is a big discrepancy in the critical chance. So some characters may have a 90% critical chance for physical damage, but a 60% chance for special damage. And for those characters, if you're trying to get that 100% crit chance on a special skill, a skill that uses special damage, then you do have to pay attention to the critical chance stat. But in general, offense is going to raise both of those stats together. We're going to make a general comment here that offense is a welcome stat on any mod. Even on a defense mod, we're perfectly fine with having offense. The logic goes something like this. You have to kill your opponent at some point. You kill them by doing damage. Anything that increases your damage, reduces the time that it takes, increases the likelihood that you're going to kill the character on the opposing team. So if you had a character that played 6 defensive mods, but every single one of those had an offense substat by accident, you'd be happy with that because the character would do just a little more damage. And that's never going to be a bad thing in any team. Again, this is my opinion. This is my experience in the game. Offense is always going to be a welcome stat, even to the extent that I'll accept flat offense as a good stat in just about any mod. Again, when one character strikes another, the damage is calculated according to base offense. There's a skill multiplier and then skill level multipliers. The total damage is often much different than offense. So if you take a character into the game that has, let's say it's an early game character, and it has 800 as its offensive stat, you could click that basic attack, and the basic attack is going to do like 1,800 damage. And you say, well, I only have 800 offense, and that other character has defense. If my attack is reduced by the defense, then why am I doing so much damage? So the skills actually have a damage multiplier built into the skill itself. Some characters have low multipliers. Some characters like General Skywalker, for example, has massive modifiers, so that his offense is already high. But, with 10,000 offense, his hits will be doing, 80,000 damage, just ridiculous numbers. But his skills have a very high multiplier built in, okay? You don't see that multiplier. That multiplier isn't listed out in the skill somewhere. And then additionally, as you level up the skill, it might say 5%, 10%, 15% more damage, and those will also add on to the skill's total damage. So when you're trying to calculate the amount of protection or health removed, it's not always easy because the damage of the attack is going to be the offense times these multipliers reduced by the defense. So you get a general feeling for how much damage your character does, but predicting exactly how it's going to work is not always easy. But suffice to say, attackers are usually going to have higher multipliers, and characters that say healer, for example, are typically going to have lower multipliers, and they're not going to hit as hard. In terms of damage math, when we want to talk about armor, defense, how that works, basically it's 100% minus the armor stat is going to be the percent of the remaining damage. So if we take a strike of 100,000 raw damage and we target that against a character with 40% armor, 40% defense, that's going to say 100 minus that 40% defense means that 60% of the attack goes through. 60% of 100,000 means the actual hit is going to be 60,000. And some skills can reduce armor or ignore armor. Some skills can ignore protection and go straight to health. So in the game, there's going to be all kinds of little nuances and variations. But the very most basic thing of characters beating on each other, it's just offense times the multipliers gives you a big number. You reduce that by defense. You take off protection first, and then you take off health. Hope that all makes sense. We're going to talk a little bit about the critical damage mod set. So the offense mod set is a 4-mod set. The critical damage set is a 4-mod set. At level 15, it offers 15% critical damage. The offense set offers 15% offense. Now, for a character that we're trying to get critical hits on, we already talked about it, we're almost always going to pick that critical damage triangle, which offers 42% additional crit damage at 6 dots, which is kind of, we default to sort of the relic level 6 dot for these calculations. Okay? So why would you pick the crit damage set over the offense set? A character with a crit damage triangle, remember, the base critical hit is already 150%. So if we add 42%, it goes up to 192. Using an offense set, 15% times 192 is equal to 28.8%. So again, just with a crit damage triangle, no crit damage set, just a crit damage triangle to 192%, using an offense 4-piece set, the damage increases by 28.8%. If we use a critical damage set, we're increasing the critical damage by 30% again. Okay? So at very high offense, where you have a bunch of main stats, maybe you're even putting your arrow as a main stat offense, your cross as offense, you've got a bunch of offense substats throughout your character, then the crit damage set contributes a little bit more. Okay? But it really is just a little bit more. Then I want you to think about this and offset your thinking. On a critical hit, the offense set and the critical damage set are roughly equal. The critical damage is a little bit more. But if you don't get a critical hit, offense still does 15% more damage. And critical damage set does nothing. And there are quite a few characters in the game that just avoid critical hits. They can't be critically hit. There's characters in the game that play crit avoidance arrows that reduce your chance to critically hit them. If you've built a crit damage set and you don't get a critical strike, you lose everything. It's gone. So for me, really the scaling isn't all that great to start with. The difference isn't all that big. And then if you add buffs on top of it, let's say you have a critical damage buff that increases your critical damage by another amount. You have something like Rey who's already giving you 30% additional critical damage. The more critical damage you stack from other sources, the worse that critical damage set is going to work for you. So in conclusion, the advantage between those two sets isn't that big of a difference, okay? And especially at low galactic power, we want to reduce the different amounts of sets that we have in inventory. If we only ever had one 4-mod set and one 2-mod set, we could pick mods for any character ever, right? And let's just say that's speed and potency. We could always pick speed and potency for every character. We don't have to go sorting through and doing crazy things and trying to find mods. If you farm speed and offense and crit damage and every single mod set, when you go into your inventory, you may find that you have three good offense mods that you want to use, and you just can't find the fourth good one. So then you have to put on a substandard fourth offense set. Trust me when I say, especially in the early game, reducing the amount of sets that you have makes it much easier to manage your inventory. And I think critical damage is one of those sets that just gets kicked out because it's not so much better than offense that we care about it. All right, the defense mod set. The defense stat is confusing because defense is listed as a number. If you get flat defense on a mod, it's a number. If you get percent defense on a mod, it's a percent. The percent increases the number. But then the stat on your actual character just shows the overall total defense percent that's affecting your opponent's attack. So what has to happen as the stat defense number increases, it has to go through an inverse calculation that says the higher the defense, the less effect it has on damage reduction. So you can imagine if it takes, let's say, a number of 5,000 defense to get to 50% defense, you never want it to be another 5,000 gets you to 100%. You should never be able to get to 100% defense because that means that no opponent's attack will ever do damage to you. And at that point, the game is just broken. And unless you have a specific character to reduce defense or ignore defense, that character becomes unbeatable, right? You can't ever allow that. So there's a way that it curves the defense, and the higher you get defense, the less and less impact that each number makes. So once you get up around 70%, you add another 25% defense, and you see your defense stat go up by like 2%. And you say, I added 25% defense, and it only went up by 2%. The thing is, you have to look at the calculation in terms of the damage that's left over, and that 2% has a huge impact on the remaining damage. Because if you go to 75 to 77%, then it goes from taking 25% of an attack to only taking 23% of an attack. And every time you reduce it like that, it escalates more and more. So the math does in fact work out, but you're not going to be able to see it easily by increasing the defense and looking at the defense stat. So let's take this and let's put it through some math, okay? So the difference between 40% and 50% defense seems like 10%, right? I've increased my defense by 10%. But if you look at how it works with an incoming attack, at 40%, 60K gets through. At 50%, 50,000 gets through. 50,000 is 17% less than 60. So it's not a 10% increase. That represents a 17% reduction in damage. And again, the higher you go, the more difference it makes. So let's take it up to 65%. Now it's going to be only 35,000 incoming damage, which is 42% less. So we increased it from 40 to 65. So that's 25% increase in the stat line, but 42% less damage. So it's almost twice as much as the percent would seem to indicate. Okay? Again, that inversion makes things hard to understand. The defense percent calculation takes that into account. It's progressively harder. Now, a defense mod set provides 25% at level 15, and relative to other mod sets, it's a very large number. A 4 mod set for offense increases your offense by 15%. You could instead get two set bonuses for defense and increase your defense by 50%. Okay? And again, it's not going to increase your defense stat by 50%. It's going to increase your defense number, which is then going to be calculated. As a main stat, it's not so desirable. Okay? So as the mod set itself, as a defense mod, is desirable, as a main stat on a mod is much less desirable. And to look at that, we're going to say, okay, if you have a 6-dot mod with health, it'll give you 16% health. And that's just direct scaling. It takes your health pool and gives you 16% more of your base stat. Compared to a 20% increase in defense, it's going to protect you, but not to the level of 16% health increasing your health pool. So in most cases, the health at 16% on the mod main stat is going to contribute more than a defense main stat. So separate those two things out in your mind. I'm not just generically saying go for defense, right? I'm saying defense mod set, thumbs up. Defense mod main stat, okay, but not what we're going for, all right? If we look at the mod set, 25% is a lot better than the 10% health, okay? All cases that I've calculated, defense mod sets increase your durability more than health mod sets, and we're going to go through more math here in just a second. This even holds true for cases where characters have abilities that derive from the health totals. Galactic Legends get a bigger health pool based on their relic level. Defense still works. Padme has certain mechanics that we'll go through that I'll even talk about, and I'll show you defense still does more for you than the health pool, surprisingly. All right, so I want to show you guys that this is not me making up numbers. This is actual, in fact, data from the game. This is my Kylo Ren unmasked, and we're going to start him out with no mods at all, with a base armor of 61%. Now we're going to add a single mod, and remember, this mod has a defense main stat default. The diamonds always have defense. So just by adding that diamond, no mod set bonuses, nothing yet, 20% main stat jumped us 4% up to 65.2. Now we add 25% from the mod set, and one of these mods also has 9.8% defense on it. So we're getting a total of 34%, and you can see, even though it's 34%, the jump wasn't as impressive as we would expect it to be, and now we're only going up about 6 points to 70.8%. Now we add another mod set, so the defense bonus for these two mod sets is 25%, and we're adding another 15% from defensive substats. So now, even though we're adding even more defense than we did in the last one, so this one was about 35%, and this one is 40%. That one added 6%, and this one not even 5%, right? So you can see progressively, as we add more and more defense, it has less and less effect on the percent, but, as we already proved, more and more of an effect on the residual damage. So with the last two mods in place, the third mod set for defense, it takes us up to an armor of 77.8%. All right. That's our physical survivability, and that's how we're just going to do this basic calculation. So for this comparison, we start at the top with the health pool, 61,408. Then we're going to use the circle, the cross, the triangle, and the arrow. And for this example, we're just going to pour the health into this character. We're just going to health everywhere, health, right? So we're going to put all four of those stats in main stats in health for both the armor case and the health case, okay? On the left side, down when we get to the line that says set bonus, you're going to see that there's a 4% set bonus for health and again, this is because it's based on actual stuff that I have in the game, and I was stuck with this 4% that I couldn't deal with otherwise, but I wanted to make it a real calculation, okay? So all those 16%, and then a 4% because we don't have any health mods, okay? The mod sets are not health mod sets. The main stats are health, but not the mod sets. And then we have our armor, and that gives us a health total of 68% additional health for a total of 103. For the case where we're using health mod sets, that gives us another 30% health, 3 mod sets times 10%, and that gives us a health pool of 587. So the health pool is quite a bit higher, almost 20,000 higher, just for those health mod sets. Now we take a hit. We're going to go into the damage, and we've got 77.8% defense versus that 67.3% defense that we had with just the diamond. Because remember, we're always going to have that 20% defense diamond in there no matter what we do, so we have to calculate that in. So with the health pool set and the armor set, we've got actual numbers in here now. Now we say an incoming hit of 30,000 damage. We reduce that based on the physical armor. And you see that in the armor case, we're getting 6,660 damage through. In the case of the health pool set, we're getting 9,800 damage through. So quite a lot more damage coming through. If we just say no skills, no anything, just how many hits, how many 30,000 damage incoming hits does it take to kill me? And we calculate that down, and we just keep reducing the character's life. For the armor case, it takes 15.5 hits to kill, and for the health case, it takes 12.4 hits to kill. Now that is a difference of 25%. You last 25% longer in battle. Okay, just to go back to the top, the only thing that we've changed, nothing changed except defense mod sets versus health mod sets. That's all we changed, and we live 25% longer. The math seems good, okay? Let's take Padme, for example. When Padme leads a team, attacks out of turn against a Galactic Republic ally, they gain protection up. It's 40% if Padme is the leader. Now, as odd as it may seem, that protection up is derived from health. When it says 40% protection up, it takes 40% of your health total and gives it to you as protection. So that mechanic with Padme gets better with more health. More health, more protection. So surely making a bigger health pool here must be the right thing to do, right? Like the discussion with defense is going to fall apart. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do the same calculation again. We take Padme's health pool, we subject it to the same calculations, and in one case we get a health pool of 58,000, and in another case with the health mods on, we get 69,300. The defense percent, and people will say that characters with lower defense won't benefit as much from defense mods, and it's not true. Even characters with quite low defense because of the way defense builds up, they're already at a low level when they start. They get bigger jumps for the percent defense increases, and it helps them almost equally, whereas health is just a direct translation of health pool, and it is just direct, okay? So keep that in mind. Even characters that don't seem to have that good of starting defense values still benefit in almost the same way. So in Padme's case, again, actual numbers from the game, 2 different mod sets, one a health mod set, one a defense mod set, 72% versus 62%. Doesn't seem like that much. It's only 10%, right? Now we're going to increase the incoming hit to 100,000 damage. And we're going to assume that somebody on the opposing team is calling this 100,000 hit as an assist. So a character like Jolie Bindo says, you go attack, that character attacks. It's considered an assist because it's not that character's turn. It's an attack out of turn. So it'll trigger the 40% protection up. So we're going to say every time this character attacks for 100,000, we're going to get the protection up to absorb the hit first. That maximizes the advantage of health, right? It absolutely, every single time, takes that health pool into account. And if Padme is going to benefit from health, we're going to see it. So now we take that hit and we launder it through defense. And then we calculate the protection up. And you can see in the middle column, the protection up is 27.7. In the defense case, because our health pool is lower, it's only 23.5. But the residual damage is lower in the armor case. So again, 100,000, an incoming hit of 27, reduced by the protection up that we get of 23,000, we only get 3,600 damage left over onto our character. In the health case, the hit coming through is 37,000 damage, and even though we get more protection up of 27,000, the leftover damage is still more. Almost 10,000 damage that gets through. And now in this case, if we look at the strikes to kill, it's 16 strikes to 7, and we live 2.3 times longer. So now, in the case of Padme, who has a benefit directly derived from health, where health should be more of a benefit, when we calculate out the actual numbers based on hits, the defense mod sets, the increased armor is actually doing more for the character by far than health. So how should you mod your Padme? Well, you should mod your Padme with health main stats on your circle, health main stat on your cross, health main stat on your triangle, potentially even health main stat on your arrow if you want to, but they should be defense sets. That makes Padme the absolute most durable that she can be. And of course, sometimes you're going to mod Padme with a speed set and a speed arrow if you want a fast Padme. But then with your offset, make it a defense offset, not a health offset. That's what the math says. So what does this all mean? It means for any character that wants to take a hit, which is pretty much every character in the game is going to get hit at some point, right? Except maybe C-3PO. But any character that gets hit, a defense set offers more benefit than a health set. That's the math. The health main stat is still going to outcalculate the defense main stat due to the scaling. So the conclusion is to farm defense sets for defense characters rather than health sets. That's going to be our conclusion. Now I'm going to put a disclaimer in there because somebody's just itching to drop it in the comments below. Probably somebody already put it in the comments below and hit enter before they even watch this part. There are characters in the game that do true damage, that bypasses armor. It bypasses, all the mechanics that we just talked about, just go out the window. So against things like Rey's ultimate, defense does nothing. it's strictly useless, and you could just write it completely out of the equation. So if you're building a character specifically for the purpose of fighting Rey, or for example Gas, who does armor shred all over the place, then yeah, the defense sets wouldn't be your first choice. But like I said in the bottom bullet point here, for the 99.7% of the rest of the game, where you're fighting against the AI in Conquest or battling teams in Arena that have nothing to do with armor shred or true damage, then the defense sets do provide more value than the health sets. Okay? So I get it. I already know those skills are out there, and I know somebody's dying to prove me wrong and correct me. But I know that. But there's a lot of the game where that is not relevant. All right, so let's talk about the set mechanics again real quick. Again, we've got the set bonuses over here, and then the level 15 set bonuses. And here we can see that 10% health versus a 25% defense, the 30% crit damage that we just talked about, that 15% offense that we talked about, and of course the 10% speed that we're going to be going for on a lot of characters anyway. So with all this said, read your character kits carefully when picking the mods. There's a lot of modding videos out there. So let's say you want to mod a resistance team or a rebel team. There's all kinds of information out there where people have good ideas on how to mod them. Read the kits. Some kits are very hard to understand. And believe me, when I was going through all the resistance kits, I had a hard time making heads or tails of it, and I had to actually ask for help from somebody. Solo base is much better at that than I am, and I finally just said, look, you got to help me understand these kits because there's too many words. It's baffling me, okay? So there's videos out there. Just realize that it's going to be very common for you to want to pick one 4 set and one 2 set. And a 4 set that you're going to pick a lot of the time is offense. So it's common to have a 4 set and a 2 set on a character. It's also very common to have 3 different sets of 2. And in the early game, for character that you want to increase their crit chance, you might put 3 sets of crit chance mods on there. If we go back here and look, for each crit chance set, we get 8% crit chance. So if you did 3 mod sets, you could increase your crit chance by 24%. And maybe that's exactly what you want to do if you want to guarantee a critical hit. The tenacity stuff that I showed you, again, 3 2-set tenacity bonuses. Sometimes you can also do a set of 4 mods with 2 random mismatched mods from whatever set. And that can happen sometimes when you're trying to optimize a character's speed. You pick the best speed set you can for them, and then you just pick 2 other mods from whatever random sets that have good speed substats. And you don't take advantage of a 2 mod set, but it's okay. You just need that character to go as fast as possible. Then it's possible that you don't even close out that, you don't even match up that 2 mod set. I strongly recommend against trying to farm all 8 mod types when you start the game. Like we talked about a little bit before, the more different sets that you have, the harder it is when you go to mod a character to pick consistent mods from consistent sets. We want to keep it simple so that modding is simplified. So now I'm going to rank the mod sets, and we're going to talk about basically what mods you should have the most of, start farming first, which sets are good that you can come in and farm more later, and then which sets you can avoid for quite some time. So the 3 sets that I believe have the biggest payout in the game is speed. Obviously, if you want a character to be fast, no matter what mod sets you use, the character will always be 10% faster with a speed set. You can never get the most optimal speed out of a character that you want to go fast unless you're using a speed set. So just based on that criteria, even though the 10% speed set bonus isn't that fantastic in the overall scheme of things, when you really want to guarantee that a character on your team goes first, you want those speed mods. So farming the speed set, especially in the early game, if you farmed 700 speed mods, you're not going to be sad about it. You're going to find plenty of characters to use them on. And literally, even if a character should be, let's say, an offense character, you can pick a speed set with good offense substats and be almost as well off as an offense set. Okay? So for the 4-mod set, we're going to recommend speed. I recommend defense. Instead of farming health or tenacity or whatever you want for your durability, I would say defense is the default go-to set for making your characters live longer. I farm them over health mods. Okay? The potency set, there's some characters that rely on potency, and honestly, there's a lot of characters that the offset isn't critical, and if you don't specifically want to make them more durable, then there's probably a debuff that can benefit from potency. So again, it's a generic set. When you need potency, you really want to be able to find some potency in your kit. If you don't farm potency mods and you get characters like Vader and Bastila Fallen, and then you have to go try to farm potency mods to get the mod set like you want it, you're going to be struggling, right? It happened to me recently when I was doing the C Unlock event. I just went and picked 3 potency mod sets for my Palpatine in order to get through that event. And I had plenty of potency mods. I didn't have a problem to go put together 6 potency mods for this character because I had them in the inventory. If I didn't have them, I would have been stuck on trying to maximize his potency. I would have been farming potency mods. So I feel like that's the set that you kind of have to farm in the background and have some of, because there's just so many characters that benefit from a little bit of extra potency that they'll never go to waste. So let's reframe this. If you're brand new to the game and you're just farming mod sets and you're at 400,000 galactic power and you're like, man, I think I need to start farming some offense and some tenacity and all these mod sets, I would really recommend that you stick kind of to these core 3. Maybe farm a couple of the other mod sets for specific characters if you need it, but kind of stick to these core 3 so that you can always pick a speed set, a defense set, or a potency set, and fill out any character that you want to mod. The tenacity set, again, if you're going to build a tenacity-based character like Enfys Nest, and you know that you're going to build that character, then you're going to need to farm tenacity mods and get some of those in your inventory. On my Darth Loquitur alt account, I knew that I was going to build Nest. So very early in the game, I did a big run on tenacity mods and started developing good tenacity mods for my account. Because I knew that I was going to build Nest, I know that I love that character. I know exactly how I want to play her. Okay? Critical chance is the same thing, but in the case of critical chance, let's say you want to do that with a Geo Spy or, a character that benefits from critical hits in some way. You can go in there and pretty quickly farm up some kind of crit chance set that will work for your character. So there's not as much pressure on that to farm a whole bunch of them and get some really super high quality crit chance mods. Early in the game, it can be good to farm up a bunch of these. And again, on my alt account, I farmed up a bunch of them because I was using the Sith Trooper, the red Sith Trooper, and you saw that every time somebody gets a critical hit, he assists. So I did that because I knew that I was going to build characters for crit chance just to trigger his ability and have a team that was kind of based around him. Offense sets, I think offense sets can be good for a lot of characters, but I waited till I was around 1 million galactic power before I really started farming offense sets. And it's not because I don't like the offense set, it's just because I don't want to fill up my inventory with too many different kinds of mods. So I stuck to really a lot of speed mods and then started to build up my offense inventory once I got my galactic power up a little bit. So farm at your own risk. Basically, again, this is my opinion, health sets will come to you through the game. You'll find some in the shop. You'll get some from events. So there are a few characters, again, and if you're trying to build something to go up against true damage, you're going to want some health mod sets somewhere. It's not bad to have some. But the game is going to give you a lot of those. They're going to come as rewards out of assault battles and things like that. So you're going to get health mods from the games. You're going to occasionally find a good one in the shop. So don't farm them. Just let them come to you. And for the critical damage set, basically don't farm it. Don't farm it. When you get to the end game and you feel like that last 8% damage that you can squeak out for a crit damage set over an offense set is going to make the difference between winning and losing, then by all means start working on your crit damage sets. But for the advantage that you get versus the difficulty in managing your mod inventory, I would say skip that set. So 2 sets that you can skip, 3 sets that are good to farm when you need them, and then 3 sets that you can just always farm and always have mod sets. Just put speed on somebody with defensive stats, put speed on them with potency stats, and you'll be able to mod just about any character in the game from that setup. Here's the Emperor. Here's the artwork for our Emperor path, where we go straight for a Galactic Legend and try to dominate the squad arena. And guess what that Galactic Legend needs to be successful to get number 1 in squad arena? You got it. Good mods. We need the very best mods in the game for our Galactic Legends. So start farming those early and make sure your Emperor gets what he needs. Wouldn't be complete unless we put up Grandma Mod with the obligatory sign. Farm your mods. Thank you all for watching. I hope this was interesting and gives you a little bit of guidance, a little bit to think about with what mod sets you actually want to farm. In the next video, we're going to talk more about how to work on those mods now that we've picked our mod sets. We're going to start talking about how to build those mods up, rule sets for what's a good mod and what's not a good mod, and then from there we'll go into how to apply those mods to characters and make it work in the game. Thanks a lot for watching. Like the video if you haven't done so already. Subscribe to my channel to see more like this in the future. Join us over on Discord if you haven't done that already. And I will see you in the next Holocron.